So tell me about your favorite part of playing Bilbo and sort of relating him to the lobbyists of today, and if anything surprised you learning about that story.
I liked that in this sort of very difficult context, I was able to just have a lot of fun. That's really what I liked most about it. And, you know, I liked what he liked. I really liked what he liked. I liked enjoying myself within the scenes and on the set, and so did he. And I liked dressing up in great clothing, and so did he. And I liked smoking cigars, and so did he. And drinking and eating and laughing, and so did he. I liked all that. In terms of lobbyists today, I mean, lobbyists are part of the machinery in Washington today, without question. But I think to a great degree, they're professional lobbyists. That's what their job is. They have an office set up for that. They have a staff that's set up for that. They have their ticket broker that's set up for that. And, you know, they've got a lot going on that is just about that. These guys were, I mean, Bilbo was sort of slumming, really. I mean, he was a very successful attorney in Nashville. He'd made a lot of money on some land deals, the coal business. And he did this because he had a great interest in it. He was a devout unionist. He felt very strongly about that. And this amendment. And he'd known Seward from the past. They'd both been members of the same political party and so on. But, you know, I don't think he didn't have an office. He wasn't a professional lobbyist. So it's shooting from the hip to a certain degree. And that's always fun. That's fun to portray somebody who's, you know, an amateur.
Right. Tell me about playing opposite Daniel Day-Lewis in this film. Well, what was interesting about watching him inhabit that character, and how did it help you inhabit yours? Maybe?
Well, when I met him, he'd done that already. You know, he'd been working, I think they'd shot 10 days or 2 weeks or something before I came on. And then I was on till the end of the shoot, because the character of Bilbo is sort of sprinkled throughout the entire film. So he was already in it, as was everybody. You know, we're shooting in Richmond, Virginia, which is steeped in that history and that specific time. Everybody had been, so everybody's head was in it by the time I arrived. So it was very easy to sort of enter that world and inhabit it. And playing across from Daniel was delightful because of that. You know, he had already been living that for a little bit. So it was, and I think he was also, I know, he wrote me a note before we ended up working together that, you know, that he was hoping that I would be as naughty as I could be, and I tried. So I know that the scenes that we had together that have an irreverent quality about them were an opportunity for him also to lighten his load. And for him, you know, Lincoln had a great sense of humor, you know, and I think he had an appreciation for people. And we had a grand time.
I mean, we are completely transported to the White House of 1865 in this film. The attention to detail, the authenticity is quite remarkable. Talk about having that environment around you, and you know how that affected your work.
It just makes it easier. I mean, you know, an actor's job inherently is trying to inhabit a time and a place and a character, you know, and a life. And, you know, it just makes it easier if it's feels much more authentic around you. And it just makes it easier to absorb it all. And everything you absorb then comes back out, you know, so you're just makes it easier, I think. And it's more fun. I mean, it's nice to, I don't know, I love that part of it. You know, I like that you can pick something up and play with it and look at something and it's all the right thing, you know, I like that.
Tell me about this story that Stephen chose to tell. There's so many, we talked about the lobbyists and that whole aspect. There's so many themes and topics that go on that are really relevant for today. What struck you most about this very pointed story that Stephen chose to tell? It's a really big story, but it's so intimate too.
That's what intrigued me when I saw the film for the first time, is I loved how it so beautifully transitioned from the scope and the size of the time and the events of that time to the smallest, most intimate. And yet, both were always present in one another. You never lost a sense of that human being, Lincoln, within the broader picture. And yet you never lost a sense of that broader picture in the solitary, most intimate moments, private moments of him. I loved that. I just thought it went from big to small and small to big, just so beautifully. I thought that was stunning, and that's due to the great efforts of Stephen and Tony Kushner, who just crafted something so beautiful.
What did you learn about Lincoln the man from doing this film? And what do you think, maybe did you learn anything different when you watched the film than from being a part of it? Do you think audiences, do you think they might?
Absolutely. I learned a lot watching it. I don't know whether I learned a lot, but I was just so curious to see it, and from moment to moment. And I think it's easy to look at Lincoln as somebody who is this granite figure that is carrying effortlessly the weight of the world on his shoulders. And I just thought it was great to see his struggle, and to see him trying to be funny and trying to make sense of his life. For me, it was incredibly exciting, and I was riveted by watching this man who, to so many of us around the world, is such a frame of reference for us, and yet not a memory, and is sort of granite in his ability to carry the weight of the world at that time, his world. To be able to see through that, and to see his world, and to see his struggle with that, and to see him trying to be funny, and to see him argue with his wife, and to see the grief that he was carrying around, and yet this enormous feeling of responsibility. I think Daniel's performance in this film is just beautiful, I think. And for me, it defined the best that I could imagine of that time. Because it allowed some of the worst You know, it allowed for that. It allowed for weakness, and it allowed for frailty, and it allowed for indecision, and when you allow for that, then a decisiveness and a conviction is all the more hard fought for. It's, in a way, you're seeing something almost unimaginable, and yet you're seeing it presented in such a humane and compassionate and sensitive and intimate way, which Steven Spielberg just put together so delicately and so perfectly, as far as I'm concerned.